Good afternoon. I'm calling to order this meeting of the Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee. I'm the chair of the committee, Councilmember Cam Gordon, and I'm joined by Councilmembers Jacob Fry, Elizabeth Glidden, and Alondra Cano. Councilmember Bender is out of town, and Councilmember Andrew Johnson has an unexpected medical issue that he's dealing with. We are a quorum of the committee, so we can conduct the committee business. There are 6 items on our agenda today. One discussion item, one public hearing to consider an ordinance amendment, and 4 items are on our consent agenda. I'm going to go through the consent agenda first, and anybody who wishes to pull something off for discussion, we can. The first consent item is authorizing a 5-year agreement for disaster relief services for emergency shelters with privately owned facilities in the city of Minneapolis. The third item, second consent item, is authorizing an agreement with the Division of Indian Work to provide health-related services for the American Indian community. The third consent item is authorizing an agreement with Virginia Polytechnic Institute and the State University of Virginia in the amount of $6,300 for a land use regressive study. And the last consent item, of the 5th item on our agenda, is passage of the ordinance having to do with our amplified sound equipment. This is Title 15, Chapter 385. This is something we held a public hearing on a while ago. We had some modifications and discussions to get the language corrected. Now it's back ready to go, is my understanding. So, Councilmember Fry, did you want to discuss any of those items?
Perhaps just briefly, Mr. Chair. Item number 5. So what is the final outcome with the amendments to the permit requirements? Do we know?
We do. I don't know if maybe Mr. Hanlon here is and he can speak to that a little bit. My understanding is that they worked out some of the details and maybe even communicated with the authors.
Yeah. I think I know what the final outcome is. I just want to make sure I'm accurate.
Go ahead, Mr. Hanlon.
Chair Gordon, Councilmember Fry. We went with the last proposal that you saw.
Okay.
With the changes that were made.
Okay.
With expanding that distance so that it was less restrictive on larger events.
Okay. So what is it coming out, like 2 blocks now or something like that? Or
yes.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing no other questions then about the consent items, I'll move all 4 items. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions? Those items are approved then. Now we'll move to our public hearing portion of the meeting. First, we'll have a presentation. I believe Mr. Hanlon's going to come back up and give us a presentation about this. This is amendments to our carryout bags and retail establishments ordinance. And we'll have a brief presentation, and then we'll open the public hearing.
So if I do it from right here?
I think that should work with the microphone. I think that yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I didn't introduce myself the first time. My name is Patrick Hanlon. I'm the Environmental Initiatives Manager for the Health Department. Chair Gordon, council members, I'm going to talk about the Bring Your Own Bag ordinance, the staff update. The ordinance on the Bring Your Own Bag, the plastic bag ban, was passed March 21st, 2016, before HECE, before this committee. Approved by council in April of 2016. It was scheduled to be in effect on June 1st. However, there was a state jobs bill that was signed that preempted cities from imposing a ban on the use of plastic bags, or on any bag, on paper, plastic, or reusable bags. And so we had to go back to the drawing board to figure out a plan to get at the intent of the ordinance while still following that preemption. So the intent of the ordinance was to reduce waste by encouraging residents to bring reusable bags when shopping, to reduce the trash or the litter that we see around the city, and to reduce the processing issues at recycling facilities with the issues that plastic bags present when they get into the recycling process. The ordinance overview as passed, so this is not what is going into effect, but it was single-use plastic bags are banned from point-of-sale locations. A 5-cent fee would be charged to customers for each paper bag, compostable plastic bag, or reusable bag at the point of sale. There was a fee exemption for residents on food assistance programs within that ordinance that had passed. So the implementation team, which consisted of the health department, regulatory services, public works, solid waste and recycling, came back and looked at how we could look at this ordinance. The simplified ordinance, the ordinance was simplified so that the requirements are easier to understand by businesses and enforcement staff, creating a more streamlined process, and to clarify the exemption actions and bag types based on stakeholder feedback. So we went out to stakeholders and got feedback on the different elements of the ordinance and incorporated that into our response. So the proposed bag fee is a 5-cent fee on all plastic, a minimum of 5-cent plastic fee on all plastic, paper, and reusable bags. There's the recommended ordinance changes is no fee for BPI certified compostable plastic bags or on bags that are brought in by customers. And so this graphic kind of simply shows the difference in the fee charges. So the proposed exemptions are for produce, bulk goods. So when you go to the grocery store and the bags that are used to put vegetables and other items, or for bulk goods, dine-in or carry-out restaurants, the bags that are used at farmers markets, and I can certainly answer questions as to why each one of these were on the exempt list at the conclusion. Retail establishments that do not possess point-of-sale systems, so cashier systems for smaller items. Secondhand bags are exempt. Bags sold in packages that contain multiple bags. Laundry, the dry cleaning bags that are used as the film to cover clothing. And then the exemptions continued is food banks or other food assistance programs, personal belongings at hospitals, the bags at dental offices, newspaper bags, the door hanger bags, bags that are used at car dealerships, and then the bags that are used for any sort of litter cleanup. And then again, the same as with the ordinances, anyone on food assistance programs. So the enforcement on this program would begin on October 1st as staff put together their operational plans for implementing this ordinance. There would be no fines until June 1st of next year, so June 1st, 2018. And it would be complaint-driven enforcement, so 311 calls to the city would be routed to business licensing, and business licensing offered to own the enforcement of this. And so a thank you to them and their staff for taking this on. During the enforcement process, the receipt shall indicate the number of bags provided and the total amount of the pass-through charge. So that's the documentation. And then retail establishments must provide further reports on the request of an inspector when they're out at the facility. Retail establishments that distribute BPI compostable plastic carryout bags are exempt under the current ordinance as it's being recommended. And then leading up to October 1st and continuing through that first year until June 1st, 2018, there'll be a heavy emphasis on outreach and education. And that will primarily be through the help of the communications department, through city's social media, Newsbite, through the council member newsletters, press releases. Other department outreach would be the environmental health newsletter, the newsletter that our department sends out, through business advisory group email lists. Solid waste and recycling would be sending out recycling reminders in with that information as well. And then as well as hand-delivered flyers to establishments that are not compliant on site visits. Part of the staff direction that was given when the ordinance was passed was looking at plastic bag and recycling locations for plastic bags. And so part of the outreach that we do will be identifying those locations and including that as part of our outreach so that people know where they can take their plastic bags to recycle those, and so that we don't have issues with litter in the city. And so at this point, that's the conclusion of the recommendations from the work group. And if you have any questions for us, myself, or any of the other members that were on the work group can answer those questions.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I did want to also highlight for at least committee members up here and maybe the people in the public that there was a section of the ordinance that got amended last time when we approved it. Before it went into effect, it included a provision that people could contribute funds to a charitable organization and then be exempted from the pass-through fee. That has been taken out of this recommendation that's coming forward. So this is something I've worked on with Councilmember Warsami and also been working on with staff. I think it's important to acknowledge that has been removed partly. I think it was going to be very difficult to enforce. It was unclear if anybody would do it. And it somewhat took away then that incentive for people to bring their own bag because those retailers wouldn't have any, nothing would be changing for the customer. I also wanted to call attention, and maybe you can go back to the graphic slide about the exemptions. Since we put this out, we've gotten some feedback. Let's go to the, well, you had that little chart on the bottom.
Second one.
That talks about the BPI certified compostable bags, this one here. So we've gotten some feedback, including from the representative from the pollution control, from the state pollution control agency, questioning why we have an exemption for the compostable plastic bags where they don't have to pay a fee. That's something that I'm thinking about and have an amendment prepared that would take away that exemption. The paper bags are also compostable. People can use them for their organics. I just did want to give, maybe ask you to explain why that's in the recommendation so committee members can know that what we're thinking about, should we put that in or not?
Sure. Yeah, and the logic behind, Chair Gordon, the logic behind putting the BPI certified compostable bags in as an exemption is to promote the use of bags for reuse in the compost in curbside organics, is to make that an easier process to be able to reuse those bags for that purpose. Ordinarily or generally, the environmental benefits for compostable bags are not much greater than plastic bags if they're used in a similar fashion. But in a city like Minneapolis, where we do have the bringing forward curbside organics, there is an environmental advantage to using those plastic bags in that organics waste stream. And so that was the logic behind that.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see any other questions at this time, except Councilmember Fry may have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hanlon, do we have any additional evidence since we took this vote last time about how this has, impacted other cities? In other words, how much the waste stream has been reduced by?
That might be a question that might be better suited for Public Works staff. We've done some research into some of the other cities.
Okay.
Hello, Chair Gordon,
Welcome.
Councilmember Fry, committee members. Kelly Kish, I'm the Recycling Coordinator in Public Works, Division of Solid Waste and Recycling. So we have not officially done any sorts here in Minnesota to determine the quantity of bags used right now versus those that may have been reduced. We do know that there are some stores that had started imposing the 5-cent fee on plastic and other bags back on June 1st when the ordinance was originally set to go in effect. And elsewhere around the country, you see differing amounts of plastic bags reduced. In some instances, there's also been that plastic bag usage has actually increased because they went to a thicker plastic bag to get over an exemption, which we kind of got away from with these recommendations as well. Yeah.
What's is there like an average or a range?
On reductions?
Yeah, on reductions. So I assume that if every single person who would otherwise get a skinny, thin plastic film bag, if every single person switches to a reusable bag for every single trip, then that would dramatically increase the waste stream.
Yes.
but I'm assuming that people reuse these reusable bags. So I mean, do we have like a range? I mean, I would assume that on the whole, if we're doing this, then the vast majority of the time there's a really significant reduction in the waste stream. Is that not the case?
So maybe I could respond. The best information that I got was back when we were originally doing it and talked to Seattle because we were modeling our ordinance after theirs quite directly. And their Tim Kroll, I have an old email I'll forward to you. He's their solid waste program management director. He said that the estimate that they got from their waste counts when they looked at residential in 2010 and commercial in 2008. So they looked at old numbers, and then they looked at after the ban went into effect in 2014. And they said that, here's what he said, the bag reduced plastic bags after 2012 by at least a total of 418 tons or 58%. And then there's some, he said there still was lots of plastic in there from some of the exemptions and things like that, but they saw a significant reduction.
So that's a reduction in plastic film bags specifically, or that's a reduction overall in the waste disposal?
He defined it as tons of plastic grocery and dry cleaning bags in the garbage sampled over those years. So,
And I can add to that. So Seattle has a very sophisticated system where they do sorts of residential waste, sorts of commercial waste on a regular cycle.
Yep.
So they would literally have it of what is going into the waste stream and their ability to measure that reduction.
Okay, but this would specifically be the reduction in plastic film bags used?
Yep.
Okay, so that's if it's specifically that, then it's a problem. If it's the reduction overall, then it's a valid number. If it's specifically the reduction in plastic film, then there's the issue of them simply switching over to a reusable flat bag and then throwing that out.
Well, the reduction overall is just how much was there in 2008 versus 2015 is what you said, Councilmember?
2014.
2014?
Right. So back
there is also that same overall reduction. Does that make sense?
The information that I got from him did not include other garbage that was thrown away. So there was an instance in Austin where they did see an increase in reusable bags that got thrown away, and so they had to take some other actions to try to slow that process down. Seattle he didn't give me counts of that. So if that was your point.
That's my
right,
question.
that was your point. So, and we'd have to do some more research to see how much the overall waste went down. But that was what they looked at: the plastic bags, food produce bags, dry cleaner bags, and the reduction there, and saw a significant reduction.
Okay, so we know, and of course this would be the case, that there's an overall reduction in plastic film bags. We need to check on and see whether there's a significant reduction accounting for other forms of reusable or paper. Is that right?
Yes, and the reporting requirements would allow us to do that.
Okay. Do we know other cities other than, so Austin had one experience, Seattle had another. Do we have any others?
Not any off the top of my head that
Okay.
tracked the reduction in paper.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're going to have a positive impact from
Yep.
this. That's all I want,
And I'll see what I have from last time we did it. I
Okay.
know that Ireland and China and Washington, D.C., and there's different numbers from different places.
Okay.
But,
Okay.
Any other questions before we open the public hearing? I don't see any then. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. I'll open the public hearing, and so far there are 6 speakers. So I don't think we're going to have to worry about timing necessarily, but if people could please keep their comments to 2 or 3 minutes, it would be appreciated. I'll just read through the list. Mike Johnson is the first person on the list, followed by Al Flowers.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Just real quick, the fee, am I to understand that it's not the business that gets that, it's the government?
No, the fee is a pass-through fee kept by the business, so they can recover the costs of buying the bags in the first place. They keep that and they can spend it on whatever they want.
All right, good to go.
That's an important detail to be clear about. Second speaker is Al Flowers, followed by Kyle Samajima.
Good afternoon, Chairman Gordon and council members. I come up here to oppose this bill of which you're talking about putting another tax on poor people. I believe people mostly in the urban area who don't know what you're doing here today. They might miss the cost. As we try to learn, particularly in the African American community, about the environment, it's always something else. And now to sit here and say that we're going to pass a bill, pass a tax that's going to go back to the owners, the business owners, and not have a plan that if you're going to pass a tax and make somebody pay 5 cents, that's just like when they had the stadium, we paid taxes on the baseball stadium. That's what the county did. So at some point, you got to really think about people that you say you're trying to, that you're serving. And I think Chairman Gordon, sitting in this chair, people got a lot of respect for you on the environment, and we want to make sure we protect the environment. But to charge people that probably can't afford it, and some would never know what's going on with this bill, and you haven't put enough education out, particularly in the African American community, to say what this means and what they do. Nobody's. I don't believe that people are going to take the bag and they can throw that down the tube if they pay for it, if they pay for these bags. So it's about education, and I'm real concerned about, you just passed a bill on menthol that I do surveys on the menthols. I support Senator Hayden and then what they are doing there. But at the same time, I didn't think that had to come here where you put little black kids in the front of this council to get that vote passed and make it look like you're protecting them, but you're going to discriminate and make some older people who smoke and got the right to do whatever they want. It ain't good for us, nobody, but they get to do that. And here we go again with this right here. It's a lot going on that urban poor people might not know what's happening here, but I do, and we're going to keep speaking on it. You should not put a charge on. I mean, if you're gonna get rid of plastic bags, get rid of them. Why do we have to pay a tax that you're gonna give back to the business? That's what shocks me about this bill, and that you would be doing that and knowing it's gonna fall on the consumer. So I'm very shocked that you're doing this. But I guess if you're in a safe seat, Commissioner Chairman Gordon, you can do that. But I'm not happy with it. I think it'll have an effect on people in my community in particular, and this is the second one. You really pushing them down our throat, and I'm not happy with that, and I'm opposed to it, and I'm gonna continue to be opposed to it. And I tell all the council members I'll speak loudly on this one because the other one was a no-win situation because we want everybody to quit smoking, but this one right here, you got a lot of control. We don't, nobody even knows in the community what's happening here today, and there's no equity or diversity sitting in here right now. Me being one of the only, well, I see might be a couple of people of color, but being here on something like this where you're going to pass a drastic tax that they don't know about, it's not, it don't even look like you, but it is you. That's what's happening today, and I'm opposed. Thank you. Chairman Gordon and council members.
Thank you. Next is Kyle, followed by Megan. Welcome.
Hello, Chair and council members. My name is Kyle Samajima, and I live in South Minneapolis. And I am here to support this fee on the bags. I did go twice to the Capitol to testify against the ban on the ordinance and noticed that it was pretty much just lobbyists there. Not pretty much, it was just lobbyists there to vote for that ban, which I thought was telling. No citizens there kind of rallying for a ban on a plastic bag ordinance. The 3 R's of reduce, reuse, recycle start with reduce, and that having an incentive to bring a reusable bag with a waiver for people who are on food stamps, who, that cost could build up and make an impact in respect to what Mr. Flowers is talking about. But that first R is reduce. So it's critical we reduce resource use, resource extraction, greenhouse gas emissions. And the city has been a leader on so many of these issues. Other cities, other countries have had really successful initiatives around reducing plastic bag use by putting a fee on them, and I urge the city to do the same thing. You notice stores like Aldi and Costco. It is not just people with wealth and money shopping there. They get all kinds of shoppers to save money. They have a habit of bringing their own bags. They don't offer them. You can buy them. People adjust when the incentive is there. They adjust to bringing their own bag. And as much as, we see the impact of plastic bags on our environment, as I'm sure, Mr. Flowers knows as well, these issues hit communities of color harder. So it would be great to see the impact of reducing plastic bag use have a benefit there as well. So just in conclusion, I just urge you to support this fee on plastic bags. Thank you.
Thank you. And after Megan is Forrest Thiessen. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Megan Cool-Stennis, and I'm here representing Eureka Recycling, a zero-waste nonprofit social enterprise in Northeast Minneapolis. We strongly support the Bring Your Own Bag ordinance and any policy that encourages reusables over one-time use products. This ordinance will help us collectively kick our habit of relying on supposedly free disposable bags and encourage bringing reusable bags to grocery and retail stores. While we are very frustrated by, and we will continue to fight the unjust preemption on the plastic bag bans, this ordinance is a great solution in the interim. We applaud Councilmember Gordon and Warsami's efforts for continuing to lead on this important issue to save resources and get us closer to a zero-waste Minneapolis. The goal of this ordinance is to encourage people to use reusable bags. One-time use carryout bags are recyclable or compostable, but the best option is reusable. For every pound of discards we have out in the world, there are 70 pounds of trash upstream from the extraction and manufacturing processes that produce each pound of stuff. Resources saved from reducing carryout bag usage far exceed each bag not created. This ordinance is good for Minneapolis to help save resources. 2 businesses helped institute the fee when it was originally planned on June 1st. Eastside Food Co-op and Seward Community Co-op courageously instituted that fee. They were already not using plastic bags, and when they added a fee to paper bags, they certainly saw a huge reduction. Eastside alone saw a reduction in 15,000 less paper bags used over the 2 months that they have had the fee. This is a viable option for businesses, and people are responding with bringing their own bag or carrying out their purchases. It's also been instituted successfully across the country. It's a proven effective tool to help us move away from one-time use disposable products. Washington, D.C. is certainly one of those cities. They instituted a very similar fee, no ban fee across the board on all carryout bags, and had a 60% reduction in bag usage in the first year. So it can be done with great results. Thank you for your leadership, and I encourage you to continue to support the Bring Your Own Bag ordinance.
Thank you very much. And then we have Forrest Thiessen, followed by Gretchen Spear.
Thank you, Chairman Gordon and committee members. My name is Forrest Tyson, and I am the Executive Director of Linden Hills Power and Light, an organization acting directly to combat the harmful effects of climate change here in Minneapolis. I'm here today to thank Chairman Gordon and the committee on their continued efforts to reduce single-use bag waste in our city. Linden Hills Power and Light supports this effort and has previously testified in support of the original ordinance, which banned single-use plastic bags. We also fought for our local community's right to manage this local issue at the state level. We believe that single-use bags are wasteful, uneconomical, and detrimental to both local and global environments. Single-use bag fees, such as that proposed here, have been shown to be supported in Minneapolis and effective in cities throughout the nation. We would support any amendments to further incentivize the use of sustainable alternatives to single-use bags. We believe this is a positive step to ensure a better future for all Minneapolis residents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Ms. Spear.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to share our perspective on the revised ordinance. My name is Gretchen Spear. I work with the American Forest and Paper Association, and I am a Southwest Minneapolis resident. The paper industry in Minnesota supports more than 24,000 jobs with an annual payroll of more than $1.5 million. As we did in the last round during the ordinance, we cannot support this ordinance again because it places a fee on our product, a product that is highly recyclable, compostable, and made from a renewable resource, trees. We also challenge the non-fee for the BPI plastic bags because, again, paper bags are considered compostable, as in our organics, the organics recycling stream. So government-imposed fees increase costs for consumers, can create distortions for the free flow of recoverable commodities, and also influences retailers' procurement decisions and can create an unlevel playing field. Again, this ordinance unfairly targets paper products, implying that they are part of the environmental problem rather than the solution. We look forward to continuing our discussion with the City of Minneapolis and urge the committee to remove the paper fee from the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's nobody else signed up on the sign-in sheet, but if somebody's here who would wish to speak, this is your opportunity. Seeing nobody coming forward, then I will close the public hearing. And I'd like to have a little discussion at the committee. So based on some of the feedback I got, I was inclined to remove the exemption for the compostable plastic. I think one of the things that resonated with me was also that paper bags are also compostable and can be used in our organics recycling program, and people can use those. So why are we saying that, giving some advantage to the compostable ones? And also the upfront costs are something we also were attempting to address with our bring your own bag ordinance, and that is the manufacturing cost, the transportation costs, all those other things. And whereas the compostable plastic bag make a lot of sense at the end of the stream because they are compostable, and it's definitely an advantage. It still seemed to me we wanted to drive people to bringing their reusable bags. So I'm curious about committee members if because I also recognize the idea, the opportunity to do it. I would prefer to move forward with a substitute that takes away that exemption. But if folks want to stick with the staff recommendation, I'm also open to hearing from you all. Anybody have an opinion, can help me out on this a little bit? Councilmember Glidden.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. It was helpful to get a little bit of feedback from, I know there was someone who sent in some email comments. Was that person from the state?
Yeah.
From the state. That was helpful. I'll say those comments kind of resonated with me. I don't know if staff had any more input on why they recommended including the compostable in the first place. Without more, I would say it kind of, I'm not sure I see the difference, as you were saying, between the paper bag and the compostable bag as far as kind of what's an objective of the program. So I'd be open to eliminating it.
Okay.
The compostable bag is an option.
That's as an exemption.
As an exemption. Yeah. I mean, I guess the other thing I'll just say is it is, I think, fairly unlikely that bag is going to be used very much due to cost. But again, maybe I'm certainly not as familiar with the product as others are. I'd be open to hearing a little bit more about why staff wanted to recommend this. Maybe in the end, it's just to have that as an additional option for those circumstances that we're not kind of foreseeing right now, but that we wanted to make sure we weren't kind of excluding some place that needs that bag option. So.
Did you want to make some more comments,
would love
Mr.
to hear
Hammer?
from you.
Yeah.
Chair Gordon, Councilmember Glidden, you're correct in looking at these issues. Compostable bags are considerably more expensive. We were looking at in areas where plastic bags maybe needed to be used or someone felt they needed to be used to have an option where they could where they could use compostable bags. And again, it was to try to motivate people to get those bags into the organics waste stream. And so the types of things you're weighing right now are the same types of thing that we were weighing as well. So yeah, that was the logic behind it.
Thank you.
Mr.
Councilmember
Chair?
Fry?
I think I agree with the chair's amendment, given that both paper and compostable plastic are in fact compostable. Do we know the upstream impact of compostable plastic bags versus paper bags? I'm aware that the carbon footprint of producing a paper bag is about 4 times that of a typical film bag. I just wonder if you have a similar upstream impact of a compostable plastic. Do we know? If you don't know, you don't know. I mean,
I'm not even sure if we got any more details from Madeline at the MPCA about that either. I
Yeah.
think she's got some assessments and some ideas, but go ahead.
Sorry, Chair Gordon, Councilmember Fry. Yes, the embedded energy upstream, again, there's not a big advantage using compostable versus plastic in terms of embedded energy upstream. It's the downstream use of it and getting it into the organics waste stream is the advantage of compostable plastic over a traditional plastic bag.
is the upstream impact of a compostable? So do we know what the upstream impact of a compostable?
I don't know the
plastic?
exact answer to that.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's fine. And then just one other question. So I think Washington, D.C. was mentioned as a success story in terms of plastic. Do we know what the results were in terms of whether plastic was reduced or increased or where it stood?
Chair Gordon, Councilmember Fry, again, I don't know the answer to the waste stream amounts, the quantities in DC or the comparative studies. And I don't know if we have anyone from our public works crew that might know.
I mean, the goal clearly, I think that all of us up here have, is to reduce the waste stream. It's to reduce the waste stream while not adding to the upstream carbon output. And so I just want to make sure that by doing this, we are in fact reducing the waste stream and not just converting it to some other mechanism.
Chair Gordon, Councilmember Fry, so we could certainly look into that, into the a case study into DC and what was found there, but it doesn't sound like anyone from our work group has that answer right now.
Okay. Oh yeah, I would be interested in DC or any of the others. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much. And I could look around and see what we might have from when we did this before. And of course, we had a much bigger discussion, much more community engagement when we first passed this ordinance, and a lot of input, and the public hearing went on a lot longer than this one. But I appreciate everybody who came back for this. I'm going to move the substitute then based on these committee comments. And there's copies over there. It should be before all of you here. I know that Al Flowers, he left, but I thought it might be worth noticing that there is some provisions in here that fees aren't charged when people are using EBT or other food assistance programs to do their shopping. And I think with that, I'm ready to move forward. I don't see any other questions or comments. Then on the motion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions? Then that motion is approved, and that will go forward to the council next Friday at their meeting. And thank you very much for everybody who came and for the presentation. And we'll move on to our last discussion item then. And this is our annual report from our Animal Care and Control, or I think we're calling it the 2016 End of the Year Report. And this is a receive and file issue, but we have some good information about what happened last year. And we have our Animal Care and Control Director here to give a presentation. Welcome.
Everybody's right-handed but me.
Do you need some We've got a lot of team of
Could you
experts
click
here.
for me? You have a lot of lefties up there.
A lot of experts up here who can help you, or out there or anywhere, so.
Oh, my goodness. Mr. Chair and committee members, thank you for having us today. I'm excited to be able to talk to you about MAC. Of course, I could talk all day about MAC, but also about our 2016 report that you've waited so patiently for. I guess I could do that too. Quickly, I just wanted to emphasize the purpose and services that MAC provides. MAC has 4 primary goals, and the first and foremost is to protect the public from dangerous and vicious animals. And I think we've all dealt with that in this room. Horrible things can happen. We also, what a lot of people don't know about MAC is that they really do provide the frontline defense against zoonotic diseases that could affect our residents, such as rabies, so that's one that we always think about, but also the avian flu. These are the frontline people that are going to be in the kind of in the trenches on that. They also enforce all the state and city ordinances that protect animals that are neglected or cruelly treated, something that creates quite a stir in our public. We also, and this is where the shelter comes in, we rescue animals that are in crisis. They manage our city animal shelter, and we have a wonderful veterinarian group that helps rehabilitate those animals at the shelter, giving families an opportunity to reunite with their lost pets, or if we can't find their owners, to be rehomed into permanent homes. We do this through 4 units that functions together, and that's our admin team, our field of veterinarian services, and our shelter. I just wanted to highlight some areas. Stand closer. Sorry. I want to highlight some areas in MAC. In 2016, we evaluated our pet adoption fees and practices, and compared to 2015, there was a 40% increase in the number of animal adoptions, which we attribute to, one, we are adopting more bully breed type dogs, which we hadn't done before, and we're also decreased the adoption fee for city residents. Animal control continues to work with rescue groups, but the change in our adoption has allowed us not to have to transfer so many of our dogs to rescue groups, so there's actually a decrease in that. And that's actually a positive change because that gives them more space to help other animals. We've actually increased our community outreach. We feel a very strong connection to the community and wanting to know what the community needs from us, how we can better serve the communities that we work for. So in 2016, our staff participated in 116 community outreach events, including 2 low-cost vaccinations, microchip clinics, school education programs, and open streets. We have approximately 35,000 animals that are, or a little over 35,000 animals that are licensed currently in the city, and that would be dogs, cats, or ferrets. As you can see, MAC also issues permits that have to do with animal type permits, such as honeybees, multiple animal permits, people who have a lot more animals than maybe like 4 or 5 dogs. We also do the fowl permit. We also do private, public, and exotic animal permits. Interesting, one of the things I want to highlight to you is to show the honeybee permits, which is the top to the right slide. There's been a significant increase in the number of honeybee permits in the city since 2013. And also, as you can see, prior to last year, actually, the ordinance change, in the fowl permit, which is the second permit down, it says small animal. Small animals or multiple animals and fowl were all in the same permit. We've changed that, and we also tiered it so that someone who only has a very small coop, maybe 1 to 6 chickens, we streamlined it so they don't have to go through quite the same processes. They don't need all the signatures. Make it a little easier for them and also a little less expensive for them. And as you can see, it's working out very well.
I was curious about the last graph at the bottom of that last slide. It's private and public events. Not that slide, but this one right here. So is this for bringing in unique animals, or what does that refer to?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. That is, a private event would be, I want to have a pony at my child's birthday party. A public event would be, we would like to have a petting zoo that's open to the public, like at a church function or something like that. And an exotic animal permit, that is actually your circuses, your major events, where they're going to bring in very dangerous exotic animals.
Okay. Do we know if any of those brought goats in?
I'm sorry?
Goats? Or is it mostly ponies?
No, goats wouldn't necessarily fall under that.
All right. They're not exotic enough. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, field services, I just wanted to highlight, these are some of the examples of what we have dealt with in the field, but we focus on enforcement of state and local animal care and control protection laws. And officers undertake criminal investigations, protect residents against dangerous and vicious animals, and work closely with the state and local health officials to defend against zoonotic diseases and rescue the sick and injured. By proactively engaging residents, we are building our relationships with their community. You will see that compared to 2015 and 2016, there was an 8.4% increase in the number of initial calls. And we include those to several factors, including the avian flu epidemic that went through Minnesota, a rabies outbreak, and an increase in community reporting serious crimes against animals. So as you can see, our call volume is steadily increasing. One of the interesting things that's also changing, and I think it's just the dynamic of MAC is changing, it's growing, is the huge increase in the number of investigations that are now going on at MAC. There's actually been a 429% change in that since 2014. Pretty significant.
But it looks like our calls for stray animals has gone down 40%.
It's very good. And that's, I contribute that to a lot of the proactive patrolling of areas. MAC used to do what's called directive patrols, and we still do those, but it was a reactive type of dealing with problems. We have a philosophy at MAC now that let's get to them before there's a problem. If we can deal with dogs who are running at large before they bite someone, for instance, we save, it may cost the owner of the dog a fine for running at large and not having the dog on a leash, but ultimately we save the dog from having to be declared dangerous. We save a victim from the trauma of being bitten, not to mention the medical bills, and the ongoing cost to an owner of a dog who is potentially dangerous or dangerous. And they get educated. And I think you're seeing a more of a reduced number of stray calls.
So also, just one more question. What's going on with the wildlife calls that went from 191 to 988?
As the city grows, this is going back from 2014.
Right.
As the city grows in population and we have this explosion of building in the city, and I'm sure Noah and I actually talked about this quite a bit. I'm guessing from 2010 till now there's been more of an explosion, but you're going to see more contact with humans with wildlife, and you're going to see wildlife that are injured and people that are just calling that are concerned. We do go out and make sure that that animal is not posing a risk to the public. Some of that may be a little bit of a change in the philosophy at MAC, because public safety is first, and we want to make sure our residents are safe.
But we don't actually go out and rescue wildlife, or if there's
We
complaints
do.
about wildlife? Oh, we do?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay.
If they're sick or injured, we will respond. If we can, many of them do end up being euthanized because they can't be rescued. Basically, they can't survive whatever the injury was. But if we can, we get them to a rehabilitation center. And really, the ultimate issue, the Department of Natural Resources, it is their responsibility, sir, to handle wildlife, but there's usually one of them for however many counties. And our residents aren't going to stand for letting nature take its course a lot of times. So it's better for us to go out and handle the situation and remove that animal from the area than to allow that potential risk to be there for the community and somebody get hurt. Interesting slide. This is the citations. We are showing it to you from Ward and also by the type of citation. One of the things I want to highlight to you is our officers are doing a really, really good job of writing warranted citations. Less than 1.5% of our citations were dismissed in 2016. That's a pretty significant thing. declaration management. This is a really important area that MAC handles for the city. Every 75 seconds, someone's bitten in the United States. And nearly every 75 seconds, 1,000 people need to seek emergency medical care. It costs homeowners $6 million a year on average. And that didn't even include the devastating physical effects and trauma that's caused from the whole thing. And usually it's because somebody was being irresponsible. You can own a dangerous dog and not endanger your community if you manage him properly. MAC takes this really, really seriously. In 2016, animal care and control officers investigated 2,030 reported animal bites to both humans and other animals. It resulted in 215 related dangerous animal declarations, 54 possible exposures to rabies, 46 animals tested for rabies, and the division currently manages over 500 potentially dangerous and dangerous animals in the city. So. Really exciting things have happened to MAC in 2016. We hired our first veterinarian that actually works for the city for MAC. We started our own veterinarian services, and we have a surgery suite now that is ours. Every animal, except for the really extreme cases that we can't do yet, are being sterilized in-house now. All moderate to mild medical issues are being handled in-house. It allowed us to provide really good care at a really good cost for the city taxpayers, and to get that care to animals quickly. The only reason that we can't handle the very major, like broken pelvises or broken legs that need to be pinned is because we don't have an x-ray machine. So that has to be done currently with our contractors. Some shelter highlights. In 2016, the shelter housed 4,196 animals with an 82% live release rate of all animals. So in that 82, or the small percentage that didn't walk out of our doors, that's included all the dangerous animals and wildlife, and everything is included in that. And no animal was euthanized at MAC for space, time, or breed in 2016. As you can see, we have shelter intake by type of animal here. In 2016, we brought in around 1,300 dogs, 1,371 cats, and 1,524 others. We do deal with everything, including alligators at times. So I think we had a 6-foot alligator last year, didn't we? Fun times. Shelter outcomes. I do want to point out died in custody is a little bit confusing. Yes, we did have 39 animals die in custody, but those are animals mostly that have been hit by a car and died en route to get veterinarian care. Oops. Any questions?
I really appreciate the information, and I really appreciate the outcomes. I think we've really been making progress, and know that I've got one constituent who particularly monitors this stuff carefully, and I have to say he looked at some of the data and came back with great reviews. Of course, he sees room for improvement, and I'm sure we'll be getting more of his input, but nevertheless, that's a good barometer for me, and he really cares about animal protection. Councilmember Glenn.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I didn't have particular questions. I just wanted to say thank you for what I think was a really well-organized report. And, you know, I'll just say kind of from my perspective, the Animal Care and Control Department, which is one that I will just say arouses a lot of passion from residents around the city. And I've kind of seen some ups and downs to how that is managed, is just a really well-run place. And I just want to say thank you for all your work, and thank you for so much effort to reach out to a lot of stakeholders that care a lot about what we do, and I know they always want us to do a bit more. I kind of hear that sometimes, and sometimes we have to manage that within the resources we have, and I just think you're doing a great job. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So then I will move to receive and file this report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. All right, and I think then that concludes our business. Okay. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.